Decoded Podcast, Season 3, Episode 31. I have listed at the top of my page, it's Episode 30, Chris, but that's not true.
It is the 31.
It's 31, buddy. You and I just had a really good on-ramp that was pretty deep.
Mm-hmm.
We were able to wade through some interesting thinking, I guess, some making connections to our fathers and the things that we saw from them growing up that kind of sit with us now, the stories that sit with us today, and really cool how they connect with us being dads. So thanks for that.
You're welcome, man. And being surprised with how they connect. That's the key. That's the key. Because when both of our dads they're both gone. We don't have access. We don't have access to them to grow new stories. So it can only be moments of kind of like noticing. That's really what it comes down to. You notice something in yourself, you notice something in your children, you notice just a quick phrase from maybe your like my mom or my sister, and really easy to kind of let that kind of flow by as in, oh yeah, we're just talking about, you're talking about that, the conversations, they become free and easy. But I'm finding more often that there's stuff in there that is like just begging to be kind of pulled apart a little bit. And this could be me, the age that I'm at, where my family's at. It could be that I'm craving, like I'm sort of craving to build a relationship with my dad. It was we don't have time in this podcast, but talked about in the past, like what it was like. I think in a lot of ways I was kind of raised more by my mom. My dad worked a lot. He commuted into Toronto, so he was gone a lot. He did play a part. He sort of coached a bit in my world, but then I kind of left and started doing a lot of hospitality. So the opportunity for us to build like that tight father-son relationship, there was such a narrow space for it to happen in, and it built a connection. It didn't build a very deep connection. I was talking with somebody else, and they were mentioning they're actually a psychologist by trade. One of my colleagues, actually, a teacher, and she said that kids, I don't have the stat right, I'll give it very generalized, but that children only need, I want to say they only need to have the like mentorship connection, like that sort of like family building connection, somebody loves you, someone's taking care of you. They only need that to be kind of like at 30% efficacy for it to have like a positive and protective kind of element to it. Obviously you want more. Me as a dad, I want to give more for my kids, my students. I want them all to have more. But as long as you're hitting that 30%, whatever that number is, it's a fairly low percentage. There's a high likelihood that as far as socializing and connection and empathy, the kid's going to be okay. And if kids fall below that percentage, then, they're going to have troubles in life. So I really have been thinking a lot about that. I'm trying to think about what happened in that narrow percentage between my dad and I. What did I learn? What did I absorb? What did I pick up? What in the on-ramp, I call them Easter eggs, because it's like I'm going back through the campaign mode of my life and going in and grinding it out, looking more like kind of find more gold, finding more like better cache of weapons, like all the different sort of video gamey things. I'm going back into my memories as soon as I notice something. And that's really kind of like, if I keep using that video game analogy, they're designed so well to have blind spots in them that you don't, unless you're really intentionally paying attention to what you notice, but also taking a chance on, well, I'm just, I never did just walk around that side of the house, or, I never thought to actually drop down into that hole because, well, it looked like it was just part of the backdrop. And then you drop in and there's like a chest, like a treasure chest there. Like it was there waiting the whole time. And just to cap off, right now, we talked about a little bit about what it means to be a dad. And when you try to be a dad and you sort of like have the kind of rules of being a dad and make good decisions as a dad. I'm right now thinking a lot about the kind of things that interest me right now and how my dad set some of those Easter eggs in my world. And I didn't even realize that he was kind of offering up parts of himself in a way that he kind of wanted me to experience stuff. So the example we talked about in the on-ramp is that he was a big horror fan, but he never wanted me to read the books. But he never took the books out of line of sight. They were always just there. Just like the edge of that house or the cliff or the hole in the video game, it was always just right there. But he always wanted me to avoid it, or at least he told me he wanted me to avoid it. But thinking back now, if he really wanted me to avoid it, he wouldn't have left the novel out on the table or on the stairs all the time. So now, years later, I really like the genre. I like the Stephen Kings and the Clive Barkers and the Robert McCammon writers of the world. Those Easter eggs, when you start to pull apart the threads of what our dads were saying and not saying. It's my kind of.
Well, the way I love the way you call them Easter eggs. I see it as, you're right. If your dad, I see, it's hard for me to explain this to you because you're talking about your dad, but I'm connecting your story to my lived experience. Mm-hmm. And the two, it's like it's apples and oranges, but I'll tell you anyway, because I think it's interesting. When you tell me, I think your dad was just saying, don't read the book because it was the responsible thing to do. But I don't think he cared whether you read the book or not. I just get that vibe from my experience with my dad. So when my dad told me not to do something, see, I think my dad rarely told me not to do things. Like I'm thinking back now and I'm having a hard time with remembering a time when my dad said, hey, don't go and do that. I just don't. Well, actually, that's not true. One comes clearly to mind now. I remember when I was a little kid and he said you could play outside and he gave me the perimeter of my boundaries. He's like, don't go past this street, don't cross this street. Mm-hmm. One day I came home and my dad was all happy and he sat me down and he was really happy and he was praising me. And I was looking at him like, what happened to you? Did you hit your head or something? And then I realized that he was outside and he was driving somewhere and he saw me at the edge of the perimeter that he had given me. And he said that he could see the wheels turning. My friends had crossed the street and went to the other side of the street where I was not allowed to go. And my understanding of the story is that I had gotten right to the edge of my perimeter and stopped. And looked around and looked at them and they're like, let's go, come on. And they didn't stop. They just kept going. They were on their bikes. And I literally picked up my bike, turned it around and went back to play within my perimeter. And I remember that was a time where he told me, don't go and do this or that. And I didn't do it. I mean, I did do what he told me not to do. I followed his instructions and I didn't break. I complied with his instructions. And I think in that regard, he actually did want me to take his don't do that seriously. But when I think of your story, I just imagine your dad at the dinner table eating dinner. Oh. And not even looking at you, just saying, yeah, don't read my books. And as he's cutting his meat, his mind is somewhere else. And to you, what he did to you was a big deal. But to him, he's just like, yeah, don't read the books. Hey, honey, pass me the potatoes. Like, that's how I envision it. It's probably 100% off, but there's something in my head that says that's what it may have looked like. And I think he was just doing the right thing. He was like, hey, don't read my books. They're adult books. They're not kid books.
The funny thing is that you become like, they're like these little kind of stalemate kind of wars though. Like that's these little sort of like conversations that you have that are just, and this is where you go to like, this is what dads have to say. This is how kids have to respond. And the through line is that they're not really like stopping or starting each other. Cause I can't tell you how many times, you're right. It would be at dinner time. And where he sat at the table, so his spot at the table, this is so bizarre. His spot at the table was, he could see directly across to the stairs. So where I'm looking at you right now, I could see the stairs right there. To his right, my sister sat. To his left, I sat, and my mom would sit facing him across the table. And I can't tell you how many times he would be eating, and he'd sort of look up, he'd look over at the stairs, and then he'd sort of eat. So I'm watching it from right here. Sorry, I don't know if it's reversing the camera, but I'm watching it on his left. And he would just he would look up and he'd look at the stairs and and then he would just say, you know, you're not supposed to look at my books, right? And then he would but this is the look he's giving me. You know, you're not supposed to look at my books, right? And I would say, yeah. I actually do his look now. Like the Peter Clough look is a little something like this. Like he's like, you got this, you got this. It's a little bit like this. That's my nod to the universe. There you go, Pop. That's the Peter Clough look. And it could be used from anything from I hear you to you better hear me.
Right.
You better hear what I'm saying right now.
I know exactly what you're talking about. So anyway, that's how we started our conversation this morning. It was a good one. It was a good way to start. I want to shift gears a little bit. I want to talk about this pandemic, the blurred lines that may exist for some educators and, well, educators / parents, because we're both in that boat. Now, you seem to have that line. When you and I talk about your day-to-day, it doesn't sound to me as blurred lines as it is in my house. I don't know where you go to. Like, my wife works in the family room on the couch. So my wife is like in the spotlight. She is prime time target for my kids to barrage her with questions or comments or whatever as she's working. Mm-hmm. I tend to move. I'm in the dining room. I'm in the living room. I'm in the computer room. Like, I don't have one place where I've set up, and I pick up my laptop and I go into the kitchen and I make my lunch. And as I'm making and eating my lunch, I'm on the laptop on the island. Then when I'm done my lunch, I will go sit in the living room where the laptop sits on my lap and I've got the TV on, and there may be a show that's got one side of my head, and then my computer's got the other side of my head. And I'm, the lines are blurred for me, but not. They are and they're not. But anyway, I read this tweet, and I want to talk about it, if you don't mind.
No, I'd love to.
Roy and Lee tweeted it yesterday, and I don't know where he got it from. I don't think he created it. Maybe he did, but it doesn't seem like something he would make. But anyway, it's a chart, and here the title is "The Caring Part of Learning and Caring from Home: How We Might Care for Our Students, Community, One Another, and Ourselves." And his tweet basically said these considerations for #AOP, #CRRP, #equity, and #self-care during these times might be useful for some of you. Have a wonderful weekend. Mm-hmm. And there's two columns. The first one is our students and community, and the second one is our colleagues and ourselves. So check this out. Under our students and our community, it says, this is not business as usual. Students with greatly varying experiences and levels of support are learning from home, away from school supports to which they are accustomed. Number 2, be aware of the disparities in home life that may exist among students in your class. Remember that your circumstances may not be their circumstances. Number 3, continue to learn about who your students are from a social identity perspective. Number 4, some students will not have reliable access to technology. Number 5, families have complex reasons for not responding. Number 6, be empathetic to individual circumstances and be open and responsive to families who express that it is too much. When I read that in black and white, it does something to me. I already know these things. As I read them, I think to myself, yeah, makes sense. Yeah, makes sense. As I'm reading these right now to you out loud, I do not have the stress on the opposing side of me that says that I am accountable I need to make sure that I do hear from them, even though there are complex reasons for not responding to me. I do need to hear from them because I need to let my superiors know whether I have or have not heard from them. And I am empathetic to their individual circumstances and open to their responses to me saying this is too much or this is why we're not doing anything. And I'm going to throw the butt in, but I'm accountable. I have a checklist in front of me. I feel like reading this is a good thing for me because it's reminding me that this is more important than the other side, than my teacher hat of accountability. Now, I know it may sound reckless. It's not. It's just when I look down at my checklist and I see blank spaces, it's an indication to me that there's more happening than just the kids not engaging with their work. That is just the top layer that I see. And there's 100 other layers underneath there that now I'm starting to see. Not starting, but like I'm going to start giving that more weight than just the top layer. Here's the other side. The other column says our colleagues and ourselves. It says we are not working from home. We are at home during a pandemic trying to work. That really hit home. Number 2, yes, we are among the lucky ones still employed and still getting paid, but we are allowed to be struggling. I appreciate that because I have some connections, people I know that dismiss my struggles, almost as if I'm not allowed to struggle because I have a house, because I am getting paid. Mind you, I'm working. I'm not getting paid and doing nothing. I think I'm working harder now than I did in the school building, but I am working, so I'm getting paid, but I am putting in the time for my money. But they don't, it's always, oh, but. No, oh, buts. I'm not oh, butting you when you tell me that you're struggling. Number 3, if we are not physically, mentally, and emotionally, if we are not well physically, mentally, emotionally, we cannot work well. Number 4, we should try not to compensate for lost productivity by working longer or stranger hours, which I think lots of people are doing. That line doesn't exist for some people. They're on all the time. And number 5, we should be kind to ourselves and not judge how we are coping based on how we see others coping. So I just wanted to drop that because I feel like if people would stop and just read this and reflect, they could get a better bearing of where they're at and whether they're in a good place or a bad place, or whether they need to flex some of this or whether they've been doing too much of this and need to go the other way. I don't know. I just think that this is where we're at now. This is where we're at now. And I think that because I am now in my new normal, just like I think you are based on our conversations. Both of us now have a routine that we're doing every single day. This has become norm. It's what we're doing now is normal. And, when people talk about, are we going back to work? I'm like, we're not. In my opinion, we're not. The school building will not open for the remainder of this school year. And part of me saying that is because I don't want to interrupt my new normal. I'm now in a head space and I'm in a physical space where I'm operating in a way that I'm comfortable with. And so I don't think I want that to be disrupted. But that's just me. Other people are starving for the disruption. I have one colleague who I smile because if I want him to call me, I just text him and say, we're not going back. I just say that, we're not going back. And then I say, like, schools are going to be closed, buddy, you'll see. And then the phone rings because he's like, why are you doing this to me? Why are you aggravating me? And I'm like, what's going on? He is so the opposite. He is like, can we just end this pandemic so we can go back to the school building? Like, I think perhaps he is fighting off the new normal. He refuses, I think, to acknowledge that new routines and new ways of operating are built now. He's fighting that in his head, whereas I'm at peace with it now. enough time has passed. I've talked to enough people. I've had so much time to think for myself about myself that this is it. I'm good with this now. I don't like it. Like, I don't like teaching the way I'm teaching. I don't like it at all. But I'm good with the routines I have in place. I've succumbed to time. Enough time had passed where I had to do things to find some comfort in what was happening, that now it's normal.
It's interesting. I think it's in a lot of ways, dude, like you and I dropped this on you. I dropped this on you a while back, actually, saying that I had this weird moment, I think in about the third week of April, where I woke up and I was in my new routine. And it wasn't until the end of the day when I had, you know what it was a little bit like? It's that moment. So my commute, I think, is a little bit longer than yours, but often, that whole feeling of driving a road and not paying attention to it. And you do this sudden like shock and awe of like, there were turns in that road. Like how did I navigate all that? It's the autopilot. It's the cold shiver after effect, the shock of autopilot. And you're like, oh, I got to pay attention here, right? I think that I had a little bit of that moment at the end of the day, one of the days in the third week, because at the end of the day, I was like, I just made it through the whole day, and I didn't have a stop and pause like this was extraordinary circumstances or unprecedented circumstances. It was just the work day. It was just the work day. The work was as I had developed. It was in the new systems that I was using. It was communicating, not in any different way because I was using digital communication tools before. It was just more intensively used now. Was I doing my support and my teaching? Yes, in new ways, but there was also lots of similar too. Like there was something in my brain that kind of went, and I was in that new mindset. So maybe I'm fortunate is that I feel like I transitioned. Well, fortunate, unfortunate. I didn't hang on to the old way for very long. The conversations in my own house, even over the March break, when they told us that we'd be home for 2 weeks, we already started to tell our kids, here's what your schedule is going to be for those 2 weeks. So even before we got curriculum, my spouse and I were already building what was going to be the schedule when we were back in the 2 weeks, which at that time, it was just 2 weeks. It was just going to be 2 weeks. I didn't at the time think to myself, oh, I bet it's going to be longer. We were just building the plan for the 2 weeks. And then now here we are, 8 weeks later. I am also fortunate in that the scope of individuals that I need to make contact with is manageable. I will say that so the students that I'm connecting with now, it's complex because I'm providing videos support to the families in my ASD community class. So I email them a whole lot. We talk on the phone a lot. They tell me what they're cooking and they're preparing at home, and then I make a video based on it to kind of give them some ways to either introduce a new skill level or to augment something that they're already doing. So that's one part of my world is making videos for the ASD crew. And then the spec ed students that I'm resourcing, that was very much is one-to-one resourcing. So I've been talking with these kids on the phone through Google Meet, no video, but through Google Meet, and sharing documents in Google Apps since the beginning. So again, I've been able to, I guess, continue with some of those relational things where, again, shifting into what was the new frame. So I get it. Like there is a, part of the, I don't remember now if it was the on-ramp or I think it was the on-ramp where we talked about some of these new things that we've developed or we've reinforced some of these things that we're doing now, how willing we are to kind of give them up. Like, are we going to be different? Have we been permanently changed by some of the changes that we've made? I love Royan's list. Like Royan's list, I read it, and part of it where I go is I've been listening to a lot of these stories from not only my colleagues, but also from the families since week 2 of us since that first 2 weeks. I've been hearing, especially with the ASD crew, I can't tell you how many times, I'd be working with a kid in the learning strats. So it's a grade 9 learning strategies crew that I'm supporting. And, as we're talking about math or we're talking about English, I can hear like their younger sibling coming in the room. What are you doing? When do I get to use the computer? Like, so the life, Royan actually way back in the day he was, so back with Chasing Squirrels, this is the last thing I'll drop on this. Back in Chasing Squirrels, Royan talked to me, and one of the things that we talked about in that podcast, he talked about his shift from thinking about social media as just a party that you're going to sort of arrive in and it's just all there and it's like, yeah, let's join in, let's have some fun, to really thinking compassionately about the people that are in that room as individuals. Who's going to notice you? How do you connect deeply with them? How do you sort of offer your authenticity? How do you sort of think about digital communication in a far more, I'll say, human fashion? And there's more to the conversation, but that was kind of the heart of it. It really got me thinking differently about the accountability that I feel when I sort of reach out digitally. So him posting this up, I feel, is almost like an interesting bit of time travel, because it's very much in step with what he was talking about with social media uses. And it's not a party for you just to arrive at and expect everyone to go, yay, you're here. The onus is on you to make sure in your individual choices, so let's say us as educators, me as an educator, to try and reach out with the authentic and understand the authentic. And sometimes it's only you giving that up. It's only you sharing it. You won't necessarily get the other side. And there shouldn't be an expectation that someone should give you the other side. But it's in that space, right? I love the list. I love it.
It got me right where I needed to be yesterday afternoon when he posted it. We don't have much time left. This is a very truncated version of Decoded Podcast. It's funny how we can flow. We can go from doing, an hour and 45 minutes right to 30 minutes based on our circumstances. But I'm going to leave you with the idea that how are we going to go back to whatever this looks like when it's over? And I even as I asked the question, I know for some people they're gonna pick up and go, like my buddy who's just resisting all of this. He's just gonna get up and go. But there are some things that we've gotten into that are gonna be hard to get out of. And I'll give you the one example. The other morning, I went for a walk. And as I was getting close to home, I was passing a park by my house. And I couldn't see the park yet, but I could hear these noises. I could hear the sound of like machines, vehicles driving around in the park. So as I was walking past the park, I saw on the baseball diamond was the tractor with the rake behind it, raking up the dirt to get the ball diamond ready for.
It's like the gravel, like sort of level the gravel. Yeah.
Level the gravel, freshen it up, get it ready. And my first thought was, why are they doing that? Nobody's supposed to be in the park. And there are no baseball games going to be played in the park. So the first part of me was like, what is going on here? Why are they doing this? Which brought back some really sad, made me feel sad for my kids, because both of my boys play baseball. We signed them both up to play baseball. My youngest is on a competitive team this year. So he's been practicing since, February, winter training, to get him ready for ball. And it all stopped, right? March 12th, it all stopped. So I was feeling sad, because I was like, normally seeing that in the morning meant that there was going to be a game that evening. And the games are fun, and it's good to see the parents and the kids, and it's all good. But then I recognized that I wasn't feeling so good, and I'm like, that's not cool. There's no reason for me to feel bad. This is the way the world is. Nobody is forcing. Everybody's in the same storm, not in the same boat. Everybody's in the same storm. Everything's halted for everybody in this regard. But then I felt hope. I felt I could see the light. I was like, this is cool. It reminds me of the good times. It reminds me of the times that hopefully will come back, where both of my boys will get out with their friends, be active, play baseball, have fun. They can have fun. I can enjoy myself, if you like, because the other half of that is, for me to be at their baseball means I'm not doing something. I'm putting work aside, or I'm rushing out of work to get to their ball, whatever. It was an interesting moment. And it was a 5-second moment in real time, but in Roland time, it is stretched from when I saw it happen to me talking to you about it now. I could just see both sides of it. And I think I'm okay right now with everything being stopped. But I know that there are people struggling with this. I know. And I do think about how I will feel when we go back to how we used to operate. Because I was busy. And you and I have talked about this. I don't see busy as a badge of honor. I don't like that. I'm not busy on purpose. I'm busy because of the circumstances of my life and the life of my family. I've liked the slowdown, the stop, but I also feel the sadness for my kids who are living a different life than me. Their busy means that they're with their friends, that they're learning new skills, that they're doing something good for their body and their mind and their soul. So I'm saddened for that not being here right now, but I am taking full advantage on my end of this stoppage. Like I was telling you in the on-ramp, I found myself dealing with other people and recognizing the growth that has come from these weeks of being by myself, of having time to think, of having time to reconcile certain things within me, and setting new challenges for myself as we move forward. So it's really ironic that we could go so deep with this stuff, and yet our time for today has come to an end.
It's true. I'm all good with that. BC goes back next week. Like as a province, they're the first province to go back whole. Quebec held back on Montreal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna try and make strengthen some of the connections to the Canadian educators that I follow out there. I'm curious about what's going through their minds right now.
I have a close friend.
I apologize, not next week. June 1st. June 1st they go back. They've made the decision. So because part of that distance, I want to connect and find out like what are the protocols and plans that they're putting in place to sort of, because one of the things they said is like one of the ministers said we wouldn't be putting people in jeopardy if we're sort of following the science and we're following best practice in order to make this happen. So
I have a close friend that lives out there that has children in the system. So I'm looking for
my sister.
Oh, your sister.
She lives in Vancouver. So
we both know people that can feed us with their perspective. I'm looking forward to that.
And then we'll find out something on probably Tuesday or Wednesday.
Well, our premier said that we would be hearing from the Minister of Education on Tuesday.
Yep.
So hopefully the Minister of Education follows that timeline from the premier, and we hear about this. We hear what's going to happen to us. Were you able to draw anything in the time that we had together today?
Yeah, most of my kit's still in the basement. So Clank is dead again. There's Return of the Living Clank. Who knows? So yeah, I'm still working off my other smaller kit, but that's what I did.
Is that? I want to call it a brain, but it looks. Oh, it's two faces looking away from each other. Is that what that is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thanks for doing that.
You're welcome. So on with the week, dude.
The week. Let's start with the weekend first.
Yep. I feel though that it's funny we're getting the one day of the good weather. Like I have a bag of dirt in the driveway that I have to distribute. So
do I. I actually have 8 bags of dirt and lots of seed. So I think
that when I say a bag of dirt, like this is the
big bag.
Yeah, not the little ones that you can put over your shoulder. This is the one where I got to get the wheelbarrow and roll it around the yard. So
We're both in the same situation. Yeah.
yard work. Yep.
Okay.
Getting the dad face on.
Enjoy. Get the dad shoes on and get it done.
Dad shoes. Oh, that's coming up, eh?
Yeah, it is.
Dad shoes 2020. I got to relight that because that's in June. Oh, I totally forgot about that. Thanks for the reminder. That's a gift. I got to work that. I want to start getting dad shoes up again. All right.
Get it up. Okay.
Chat you soon.
Yeah, have a good one.
Bye.